The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
And this is live from the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, a brand new educational program designed to enlighten you on how podcasts can help you and your business. Here's your host, David Garofalo.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is a 21-minute weekly podcast. It's 21 minutes or less to help you get the message out, grow your business, and build your bottom line. Let me bring your marketing and advertising into the 21st century at Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. So today the subject is going to be, why should you want to do a podcast? Do you want to do one? Maybe you're not even thinking about doing one. Maybe you have been thinking about doing one. Why should you get up and do it? And when I tell you to do it, I mean do it now. You've been waiting long enough. Enough is enough. Let's begin. So a 21-minute podcast. Let's start the clock now. And here we go. Why should you want to do a podcast? Well, if you own your own business, you know the regular form of advertising and marketing and promotion has changed. If you don't know it, take a look around. You haven't been paying attention very much. It has changed, and it changed dramatically. Your local radio station, your cable TV station, your local newspaper does not have the subscription rates, the listens, the views as it used to have. It's not their fault. Times have changed. And if they haven't changed along with them, you're paying for advertising, a lot more for advertising, getting a lot less. The guy selling typewriters, if he didn't make a change and get into keyboards, then he has nothing to sell because nobody's buying typewriters right now, right? So we got to make some changes. People today don't wait for their shows anymore. The days of Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, my show is on, that's when I'm going to watch it, is the old way. And you may still be that way, but let me tell you, the next generation certainly isn't doing it that way. They watch what they want when they want. They listen to what they want when they want. So it's on demand. That's the way it is. That is the way of the world right now. So you need to get in with that. If you're buying an advertisement right now and it sits there at 3:05 on a certain radio station, you have to get lucky that your potential client is listening at that moment, paying attention at that moment, in the range of that radio station at that moment to hear your subject and your commercial. And at that point, be able to take down the information. Let's assume they're driving, to be able to get that phone number that you rattled off 3 times, that web address that you ended up saying. Can he remember it? Will he remember it till he takes the next turn? The answer in most cases is going to be no. So you want an on-demand product that they're listening to and that they can actually pause. You're listening to this and you want to hear the beginning of the show, you can rewind. You can go back to the beginning of it. It's at your spot at all points. You can look at the time. Okay, we're 3 minutes and 15 seconds in. You can see that number that's on there, and you can say, okay, this is where he gave that information. I'll check that information out later. There may be show notes that are attached that'll have that information on there, easy for you to get, easy links. All those things can happen in today's medium, and today's medium is the podcast. What would cost you millions of dollars to do, to produce, to get out there into the marketplace just 5-6 years ago, millions and millions of dollars, can cost you very, very little, virtually nothing. Some equipment and some know-how, and you're ready to go. But what you have to need to know is know your particular business that you're trying to market, because you have to provide the person listening on the other end some content that would be interesting to listen to again, listen to next week's episode. Or if you're a one-and-done show, you're going to do one thing and it's going to sit out there. But that's not what I'm talking about. The answer to advertising has always been repeat, 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 right? It has to be heard many, many times in time for somebody to actually be engaged and actually make the purchase at that time. So now is the time to do it because it can cost you very little to do, and this is where the direction of the listener is going to. They're not there on that AM station anymore. They're not buying your local newspaper and going through through it. It's not happening anymore. And you can fight it all you want. You can disagree all you want. But the facts are the facts that this thing has changed. And you're either going to change with it or you're going to die with it. So make that decision what you want to do. You can come to a place that provides the equipment and the know-how and just bring your subject matter. It exists. A podcast cafe, such as the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, for instance. You come here with your know-how. You know the subject you're talking about. And this place will provide you with the right equipment, with the producer that can operate it, with the know-how to take that information afterwards and put it on the search engines and get it out there for many, many people to listen to, put it in all the different locations that it needs to go to, and help the search engine optimization of your program all at the same time. Certainly you can do it yourself, but if you're looking for a place to actually do it for you, it exists. This happens to be one of them, the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. You don't have to buy the equipment. You don't have to pay the outrageous numbers to get onto certain platforms. It's all done for you for very little on a weekly basis. Now, let's talk about a weekly basis for a minute. Your show should be on a weekly basis. And it doesn't have to be a long show. This show, for instance, 21 minutes or less. Your show ideally should be around 24 minutes because why? Why 24 minutes? Where did you pick that number out of the sky? It's the average drive time of a person is about 24 minutes getting to and from work. You get to work, you can listen to an episode, you go home from work. And what you want to try to do is get in the listener's rotation. So every Wednesday, you produce a podcast on Tuesday. Every Wednesday, there it shows up on their iPhone, on their platform, whatever that is. They see it's there, waiting for them on Wednesday morning, and it becomes a habit. And that's what you want to create, a habit, them listening to you over and over and over again. You better provide them some entertainment along with it. So you're providing your information, but try to be a little entertaining as you're doing it, engaging them into that, or teach them something, right? So we're doing the show of why should you do a podcast, and we're going to teach you each and every week a little something about how to do a podcast, but you should get something out of this, right? In order for you to listen to it next week, whatever the show that's going to be on, I better have provided you with some sort of information today so you can look forward to more information later on. So if you're in the actually, you know what? I'm going to take a break right now. And just for 1 minute, and you're going to hear about Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. We're going to be back in just 1 minute. Stay tuned.
If you're in the area of Boston North into southern New Hampshire and you're thinking about doing a podcast, there is a place you have to see. It's called Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. Located right over the border into Salem, New Hampshire, Studio 21 Podcast Cafe is a live working full-service podcast and vodcast, that's video on demand, studio. All professional equipment, professional producer, and total distribution of your podcast is done for you. Would you like search engine optimization for more people to find your business or better ranking on Google? Well, Studio 21 Podcast Cafe can do it all for you for far less than you think. Schedule a free 21-minute no-obligation consultation by going to www.studio21podcast.cafe. That's studio21podcast.cafe. Now, back to the program.
And we are back, and we're talking about why should you want to do a podcast. So I'm going to give you some good reasons to want to do a podcast, but I have to stress once again that when you're doing the podcast, you need to know about the subject that you're doing it. Your business, hopefully, right? The business you work for, or what you're trying to actually sell. Whatever your subject matter is, you better know your subject matter inside and out. And I would say when you're talking about the subject matter, the answer is to go deep, not wide, right? We're not going to talk about a whole bunch of things. We're going to go short and deep. So one specific thing. So today's show, this is a Studio 21 Podcast Cafe show, and we're talking about how to do podcasts. What we're talking about today is why should you want to do a podcast? And that's the show. That's as small as this show is going to be. Just why do you want to do a podcast? The answer to the question of why you should want to do a podcast. And we're going a little deep with that. So I'm going to give you some good reasons why you should want to do a podcast. First off, doing a podcast is going to improve your public speaking. You're not a good public speaker. Everybody can improve. And how you're going to improve is by doing it over and over on a weekly basis. So maybe it's not the end-all or be-all to do a podcast, but every once in a while, once a year, you got to get up at that meeting and do some public speaking. I promise you, doing a podcast week after week after week is going to improve your public speaking. All of a sudden, it's going to come a lot easier to you by doing it all the time. At the beginning, it's going to be terrible. You're not going to like it. You're not going to like hearing your own voice, let's say. How do you improve things if you don't start it? You must start to improve. Once you start it, next week's a little better. Next week's a little better. You go years into it. You're getting really good at it. It's no problem. It's secondary to you. Doesn't mean a lot. It doesn't bother you anymore. Now you are better at all public speaking, and you'll become the go-to person for your company, that you'll be the one to speak because you have no problem with it, because this is a rehearsal. Every single week you're just practicing, and you're going to listen to yourself when you do it. And no one likes to listen to themselves, I understand, but how do you improve unless you hear yourself and then you hear these things? You know, I don't like when I do that. And then you hear it next time and you have improved it and you work on it as that goes on. Will it make you the authority or guru on your subject? The answer is yes. It will make you the guru and the authority on the subject that you're talking to. As you're doing it and as you're getting more and more people listening to you, you will become the authority on the subject. You're going to be the go-to within your whole industry. People in your industry in the same level as you are within that industry are going to look to you as the industry leader. That's the way it's going to happen, because you're the one with the platform that's saying it. And what you say is the authoritative word that's being said, and therefore you were going to be the one that goes. If something needs to be said for a writer, for a book or a magazine, who are they going to go to? They're going to go to the authority on the subject, and it's going to be you. So you're going to get more advertising out of your podcast than just your advertising, because other people are going to be advertising for you. And you heard the conversation of the wording of things going viral. That's how it'll end up happening, that one person hears from another person, and then they end up telling another person. And the information that you are the authority on that subject, a guru of your subject, is going to get known. It's going to get known fast. So you will get famous. There's no doubt about it. Another reason why you should be doing a podcast, it's to get you and your business noticed like never before. So maybe you got a brick and mortar location or something and people drive by and see your location. Maybe you're advertising on the radio. Maybe you're advertising on TV. Maybe you're advertising on print. Well, there's people out there that don't use any of those products, don't happen to be driving by your store. This is another, at the very least, this is another platform where other people wouldn't have seen you or heard from you in that other platform, end up seeing you here. So this is another chance to get your business noticed at the very least. I would argue that it's going to be your best chance to get your business noticed, but, you know, we can make that argument another time. Turn your advertising budget into a revenue-producing machine. So right now, you are spending money on advertising, and as I said, your ad is out there for the moment that it's out there. Once you've gone into the podcast world, your ad or your message that you're saying is out there 24/7, 365. Every hour, every day, that's happening. While you're sleeping, your message is getting out there because you put it out there in a podcast or vodcast, video on demand form, and we can get into that in another episode and go deep on that. But your message is getting out there 24/7 at any given time of any given day, forever and ever. That message can go intact with all that information out there, and it'll stay there, and it's working while you're sleeping. That's not the case with every other form of advertising. Once that 1-minute commercial has gone by, it has gone by and it's gone forever. This ad stays intact forever and ever. Your message, what you're trying to get across, believe me, is listened to all crazy hours of the day. While you're sleeping, it's still happening. Turn your advertising budget into a revenue-producing machine is if you have some advertising in there. You're actually making money while that's being listened to. Also, if you're selling a product on there, your ad, like a TV ad that runs all night long when people are sleeping, there's, those constant ads that are playing all the time and trying to sell you something as seen on TV. Well, this is your as seen on TV, and it's going all the time while you're sleeping. Somebody's signing up for your website, signing up for your newsletter or your product that you're trying to sell. So that's another reason why you're going to turn your advertising budget into a revenue-producing machine. Advertising will be a big reason for that. If you get an advertiser on there, they're actually paying for your advertising at the same time. So we keep trying to do that. Promoting your business 24/7, 365. Preparing for a show will sharpen your knowledge and even get your knowledge better about your subject matter. So as you have to prepare for your show, remember, we're going deep and narrow on this. We're going to talk about a certain subject and we go deeper to it. You have to do some preparation in time for that show. So in order to prep for this show, I had to try to figure out and jot down all the reasons why you would want a podcast. And by doing that, I had to think about it and I had to Google some things and try to find things out. And I actually had to do some homework. While I was doing that homework, it actually helped my knowledge of why should I be wanting to do a podcast? I'm doing a podcast, but, maybe I didn't think of this. Maybe I didn't think of that. And my knowledge myself of my own podcast is now improved just because I was learning, getting ready to do this show of telling you why you would want to do a podcast. While you're doing yours on your narrow subject matter within the business that you're in, you're going to improve some things that are going to happen in there. So you're going to improve your overall business by getting ready for your show. It will also get your social media buzzing, and you'll learn what viral is all about. So before your show goes on, you can go on your social media platforms and let everybody know your show is coming on soon, maybe tomorrow, and this is what the subject's going to be about. And then tomorrow, right before the show, you get to go on your social media again and tell them it's about to start in a little while if somebody wants to catch it live. After it's over, you can put the links to the recorded show already and say, here is the recorded show. It was a great show. This is what we talked about. So there's 3 touches you can have with the consumer, telling them about one show that you already did. And if you do this every single week, look at the amount of time you're touching social media with this information. And these links that you put out there can easily be shared. So you'll watch your friends share these things, and this is where viral happens, that one person shares to 3 people, those 3 people share to 10 more people, those people, and it multiplies and multiplies and multiplies, and you'll watch your downloads of your show go over and over and over again. The next reason why you should want to do a podcast is, to be honest with you, it's fun. Why shouldn't you have a little fun anyway, right? So what's wrong with having fun doing a podcast? Helping your business and making money at the same time. That's a win-win-win situation. That's a trifecta if you ask me. So you can do that. You can pull that all off, and have a little fun while you're doing it. Try to have fun when you're doing your podcast. You'll keep doing it if that's what you end up like doing. The next reason why you should be doing a podcast is a lead conversion tool. It gives you a reason to email your contacts and leads every single week. So your weekly newsletter, your weekly email that you send out to your clients, you can actually incorporate that in and say, hey, here's last week's show. His next week's show is going to be on this time at this time, and here's a link to be able to catch that live, and you're able to contact with that person, and maybe they'll be looking forward to your emails now, because inside it has lots of content, not just what you wrote, but actually your 24-minute show on the subject matter that it's in. Sometimes it's going to interest them, sometimes it's not. Sometimes they'll be surprised. They think they're not interested in a subject. They start listening to it, and you can see these numbers that they listen all the way through it. Another reason why you should want to do a podcast is you can mix the Kool-Aid. So what does that mean, mix the Kool-Aid? So what you want them to do is, you hear the expression of don't drink the Kool-Aid. In other words, don't fall for what somebody else is saying. You're actually mixing the Kool-Aid this time. You're actually deciding what you're going to talk about and where the direction of the conversation is going that you're having. And you can certainly put your spin on what it is. Here I am trying to sell you doing a podcast, and I'm telling you all the reasons why you should want to do a podcast. I can tell you a bunch of reasons why not to do a podcast, but that's all we're talking about because this is my show, and my Kool-Aid that I'm mixing to you is telling you why you should want to do a podcast. Why you shouldn't want to do a podcast is you don't know your subject matter well enough, and you're going to look bad doing it because you just don't know your subject matter, and you know what? It's a little scary getting up here and people are looking at you, and maybe that's why you would not want to do it. Why you would want to do it is because when you do it, all those will go away. The next thing you know, 3 or 4 times into it, it's going to mean nothing to you, and you're going to have improved your life. There's really a lot of reasons why you should want to, and really, there's no good reason why you should not want to do it. Your podcast is a propaganda machine if you want it to be. It can be your subject, about you and your subject, all pushed to your direction, period, and just get your side of the subject matter off if that's the direction you want to go to. If you want to go more balanced, then you do the 50-50 thing or whatever. You have a guest on and go direction. It all depends on your subject matter or what your business is all about. Another reason why you should want to do a podcast, it will be a real value to your business. Growing you and your business, you will grow because of it as a person, as a broadcaster, as knowledge of your company. And the great news is your business will grow because of it also, because you're providing information and advertising that's out there forever and ever. If you do get an advertiser that's on your show, you'll be providing him good advertising also, direct target marketing to the direct person they want to. It's a win-win situation for you and anyone that attaches yourself to you in your podcast. You get to touch your prospects many, many times. If you do a weekly show, which is what I highly recommend you do, you will be touching them every single week, and your show will snowball into success. That's the way it'll go. Why you want to do a podcast is you get into the 21st century, because you're not. If you're doing the old ways we talked about before, if you're still going to print, if you're doing a coupon in the mail, if you're doing a AM radio station commercial that's out there for that 1 minute that you're overpaying for. If you're on some cable station, I got 1,000 cable stations. You're going to find the one that I'm listening to at the right moment. Good luck. I mean, this is the change up now. It has changed. You want to get into the 21st century, you get into doing podcasting. If you can't do it, you get somebody in your company to do it for you. But this is the move to make. These are just some of the reasons why you want to start doing a podcast. There's lots more. If I knew your business well, we could sit down and talk about your business. I'll come up with a whole bunch more if that's what you want to do. If you want to talk, if you want to sit down, please contact me. You'll find the contact button at Studio21podcast.cafe. That's Studio21podcast.cafe. Go up there, contact us, and you're going to get the information. Tell me about your business. Come up to the studio. I'll buy you a cup of coffee. We'll sit there for 21 minutes. We'll talk about your business, and then maybe for 3 or 4 minutes, we'll get up on stage and do a little podcast about your podcast and show you how easy it is. Next week, we're going to tell you how to start doing a podcast. So that's my 21 minutes, and I'm out of here. This is how easy it is. You've been listening to the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, live from the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe in the United Podcast Network.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.